I'm wondering if you have heard the following expressions. Water over a duck's back. Have you heard of that one? You can say yes in church, it's okay. Yes. How about this one? You hear, but you don't listen. Yes. And then what about this expression? Those words don't speak to me. Yes. You heard that one? Well, I've been thinking about these expressions this week because they seem to capture my experience of reading the gospel throughout the week, at least at first. I mean, how many times have I heard the story of the vine and the branches and Jesus calling us to abide in him? All this talk of abiding in Jesus, remaining in him, dwelling in him, it just seemed to kind of roll over me like water on a duck's back. For days, it just didn't speak to me. It kind of bounced off me. Until I realized that what Jesus was talking about was motivation. What he's getting at is motivation. What drives us? What influences us? He's asking us to stay connected to him, the true vine, to live from him. And in doing so, he's asking, what is it that drives you? What influences our behavior, our reactions, the way we treat other people? Years ago, I was teaching theology on the faculty of Georgetown University. And at the end of the year, the student newspaper had come out, and a student I know showed me the new paper, the recent edition of the Hoyer. And she pointed out how one of my colleagues in the theology department had been kind of identified as one of the best teachers of the year. And instead of celebrating this fact, I started to point out to her some of his flaws and limitations. You see, I was abiding in jealousy. And as I was explaining to her why he wasn't so great a professor as everyone thinks, I was kind of looking at myself like, why are you doing this? What's going on there? I was abiding in my own insecurity. When I was in high school, I had a job as a delivery boy for a local pharmacy. It was a fun job, and I enjoyed the owner, very smart man. He was great with the customers. Every once in a while, he would just explode in anger. You never knew when or why. He just would erupt. And it seemed that on those days, he was abiding in his frustration. He was kind of living out of being influenced by his own anger. So I teach at Catholic University, and I work with seminarians there. And every spring, I watch as a certain group has to take comprehensive oral exams. And as this exam approaches, I watch the seminarians as they are influenced by their fears and insecurities, that internal critic that says you'll never pass this exam until it's over. You know, and this is all true of our modern society. We have built a modern economic and political system that that abides from the accumulation of power and wealth. And it's produced a world of hurt and hostility, a world that can be cruel and cold, brutal and blind to the needy. And it's into that world and into our lives and the many forces that we are under their influence, that Jesus comes. The risen Jesus steps into our lives and into that world, asking us to be driven and motivated by his love and life. He wants to create relationships and communities and institutions that abide in his love and not in the accumulation of power and influence and wealth. So where do you abide? What are some of the dominant influence and forces that shape how you relate to family and friends and co-workers? Ooh, that's a tough question. Takes a lot of courage to face that one. Maybe it's a little safer to look back a few years. Look back at some of those relationships and experiences and see what were some of those needs and assumptions? What were some of the emptiness and pain that may have been motivating my reactions, the way I treated other people? We often abide in fear. We're often driven by the need for recognition. We live in a culture that says recognition is essential. That's why we all get dressed up. That's why we want likes on Facebook. We abide in resentments and grudges that I've been holding for 30 years. I can't even remember why it started. So here's the good news. The real good news of the Easter season. The reason Jesus has come to us through word and sacrament, through each of us, through his risen presence, to share his risen life with us. He comes to this community and into your lives and mine because he wants to share his peace, his shalom with us, his forgiveness. He wants to breathe into us his risen life so that our hearts and minds are freed and healed and expanded so that we abide in his rich life. Today, my friends, I want you to hear in a fresh new way Jesus' invitation to come and live out of his life. He says, abide in me, remain in me. Listen to what he says this morning. As the Father loves me, so I love you. You see, Jesus abides. He lives out of the Father's love. It's the Father's love that is the sole motivating force for him. And at the same time that Jesus abides in the Father abides in him. This is an eternal, boundless exchange of love and life that we are invited to live from. And don't think of it as something up there. No. We're talking about the boundless, inexhaustible love of God that is just underneath the surface of everything. It's the reality within all reality. And Jesus invites us today to live from this. Now, I hope that there have been some people in your life who have lived from this. Some people who have lived from it, and they've been kind, they've been generous, they've been people who've been filled with peace, they've worked for justice and truth. And perhaps there have been moments in your life when you look back when you too, maybe to your shock and surprise, you too somehow lived out of this infinite pool of divine life. Perhaps there were moments when you felt free to love. When all of a sudden you didn't need to explain yourself. You didn't need to control everything. You felt connected and courageous and generous and open and acted out of something that was so much bigger than yourself. If you have, boy, give thanks. Give thanks. Now here's the good news. The Lord keeps coming to us and he keeps calling us and drawing us out of our isolation and our fears and our pain into his friendship. He keeps working to create relationships and communities that live from his love. So my friends, do you want to live from that inexhaustible pool of his life? Just say yes.
Yeah.
Even if you're not sure, just say yes. So let me conclude with a brief meditation for you. Let me give you a taste of living out of Christ's abiding love. So close your eyes for a moment. Go ahead, if you haven't already. And I want you to imagine yourself sitting at a table at the Last Supper. And on the table, there are cups of wine. There's pita bread and hummus and pieces of lamb. Other people are sitting at the table. And suddenly the risen Lord approaches you. It's really him, and he puts his hands on your shoulders. And he says to you, I have been choosing you your whole life. You have not chosen me, I have chosen you. And you have served me well. But today I want you to be my friend. And watch as he nods at you and smiles and then says to you, I love you as the Father loves me. Allow that to just penetrate right through you as he asks you to live from his love, to abide in him. He smiles and tells you that he's always calling you out of your fear and frustration, your hurts, to live from his peace and love. Thank him for this. And then listen as he tells you to go and bear fruit by loving others as he has loved you. Amen.
Yeah.